so gravely wound and kill thousands and thousands of people, including many Americans.
We've heard from both the Israeli Prime Minister and the U.S. President that the Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei, has been killed. The Iranians are denying that and saying that he's still the head of the regime.
This is a moment that will be studied for generations. It is a moment when global power, fear, strategy, and history collided live on the world stage. A moment where the United States and its ally Israel undertook a military strike that changed the Middle East forever. A strike that did not just hit missiles, tanks, or military bases. It killed a foreign head of state, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. This is not ancient history. This happened just days ago on February 28, 2026, and the whole world is now asking the same question. Why did the United States target the supreme leader of Iran? First, you must understand who Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was, and why his death matters. For decades, since 1989, Khamenei stood as the ultimate authority in Iran, more powerful than a president, stronger than the military commanders, and revered by hardline factions inside the country. He was at the center of every major decision Iran made, militarily, politically, religiously, and diplomatically. He was not a ceremonial leader. He was a ruler with unchecked authority, the central figure in a system where the government, the military, and the religious establishment are fused into one. To Iran's allies, he was a symbol of resistance. To Iran's enemies, he was its greatest threat. Now he is dead, and it is that death that jolted global politics. So why would the United States go so far as to target the supreme leader himself? To answer this, we have to pull the thread back, way back into years of tension, rivalries, and geopolitical strategies. For decades, America and Iran have been adversaries. It began with the 1979 Iranian Revolution, after which the United States and Iran became deep, mistrustful rivals. Iran's government challenged U.S. influence in the region, supported militant groups hostile to American allies, and promoted a form of regional leadership opposed to Western influence. Decades of incidents, threats, proxy conflicts, and covert actions followed, but the tension intensified in the 2010s and 2020s, especially over Iran's nuclear ambitions and missile programs. The United States repeatedly accused Iran of trying to build a nuclear weapon under the guise of peaceful energy programs. Iran denied this, and insisted it was within its right to develop energy and technology. Still, intelligence assessments from Western nations, including the U.S., suggested Iran was inching closer and closer to a threshold where a weapon could be feasible within months or even weeks. This was more than conjecture. Diplomatic talks throughout 2025 and early 2026 repeatedly stalled. The U.S. demanded verifiable denial of nuclear weapon intent, while Iran refused to fully comply. So when the Trump administration, backed by Israel, finally decided to take action on February 28, 2026, they did so with a stated justification that they could no longer allow Iran to develop capabilities that could threaten not just Israel, but the United States and its Gulf allies. And this was not presented as a spontaneous act of aggression. Rather, it was framed as a preventive response to a perceived existential threat. But there is one key reason that transforms this from a military conflict into what may be a world historic event. It was not just Iran's missiles or nuclear sites that were hit. It was the leadership itself. Multiple Western and regional news sources confirm that the strikes were carried out in coordination with Israel, and targeted senior political and military figures, including the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, in what was described as a decapitation strike. The moment that strike was made public, the world's power structure shifted. Make no mistake, no nation in the modern world attacks another nation's head of state unless it believes the stakes are existential. Official American rationale, according to public statements from senior U.S. officials, including President Trump, the operation, called Operation Epic Fury, had several core objectives: to eliminate immediate threats to U.S. allies and American forces abroad, to halt Iran's nuclear weapons potential, to cripple Iran's missile capabilities and military command infrastructure, to remove the top leadership that orchestrated these threats. In the official White House narrative, Khamenei was not targeted for who he was as an individual, but for the role he played in supporting policies that Washington described as destabilizing and dangerous. The United States government accused the Iranian leadership of decades of aggressive behavior, funding terrorism, backing proxy militias from Yemen to Lebanon, attacking U.S. assets in the Middle East, and continually developing missile systems capable of reaching deeply into the region. So the argument was this: the person who bore ultimate responsibility for those actions could not continue to live, lest the threat endure. Whether people view that justification as right, wrong, aggressive, or defensive, that is the logic that was publicly offered. Strategic timing and intelligence. Striking a nation's leader is not something that happens by accident. According to multiple reports, detailed intelligence from the United States, including satellite surveillance, signals intercepts, and human assets, had finally pinpointed Khamenei's location and moments when Iranian leadership was gathered together. That presented what U.S. and Israeli planners describe as a rare and narrow window of opportunity. The choice was made, strike now, when leadership convergence made it more likely to hit the highest command, and thus theoretically hasten the collapse of the regime's decision-making. That is intelligent strategy at its most aggressive and its most consequential. It was not done in secret. President Trump openly spoke about removing threats, framing the action as preventative, imperative, and unavoidable. But targeting a leader is not just war, it is political warfare. Consider this: no modern nation, especially not a democracy bound by international law, attacks another nation's leader without claiming an exceptionally strong justification. Under international law, such an action is only defensible when a nation can demonstrate it acted in self-defense to prevent an imminent attack, or after the United Nations has authorized force. In this case, the United States and Israel acted without clear UN authorization, instead relying on the argument that Iran's continued nuclear motion and regional aggression posed a threat that justified preemptive action. Many allied governments, including Britain, publicly stated that the United States must explain the legal basis for its strikes, especially given the gravity of killing a foreign head of state. This indicates that even among close allies, there is concern about whether the legal threshold for such a strike was clearly met. But this is not just about legality or strategy. This is a conflict that is already reshaping the globe. After the attacks, Iran launched missile and drone strikes against U.S. bases and Israeli targets across the region. Iran's president vowed that vengeance for Khamenei's death was a legitimate duty and right, and major news organizations have begun referring to the situation not as scattered conflicts but as war, involving sustained offensive, defensive, and escalation actions between nations. Why this matters for the world: when the leader of a country as strategically significant as Iran is killed by foreign military force, the impact is not local, it is global. We are now seeing regional instability as Iran's allies and proxies react in Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, and beyond. Global economic disruption, especially in oil markets and shipping routes through the Strait of Hormuz. International diplomatic tension as world powers re-examine their alliances and condemnations. Questions about future global security and the precedent set when one nation kills another nation's highest leader. And these repercussions are not theoretical. They are unfolding right now, every hour, every day. But let us be clear about something important. The debate over why the United States targeted the supreme leader of Iran is not just a debate about one military action. It is a debate about the future of world order. It touches on what justifies war, what constitutes self-defense, when preemption becomes aggression, how nations balance safety with sovereignty, and whether killing a leader is ever morally acceptable. People across the world are arguing about this. Some say it was necessary to protect millions and stop the development of nuclear weapons. Others say it was illegal and reckless, and that killing a leader sets a dangerous precedent that could unravel international relations. No matter where someone stands politically, this moment will not be forgotten. It will be studied in history books, argued about by scholars, and debated in media for decades. So let me ask you this before we go further. If a nation believes a foreign leader represents an existential threat to global stability, should it be allowed to act militarily against that leader? Is the response measured and justified, or is it a dangerous escalation with consequences no one can fully predict? Think about that. This is not a story from a textbook. This is happening now, right in front of our eyes. The consequences will shape the next decade of geopolitics, alliances and global security, and the repercussions will be felt far beyond the Middle East. Not just in capitals like Washington, Tehran, or Jerusalem, but in every nation whose stability depends on peace, trade, and international law. Because the death of a single leader in a single strike can alter the destiny of millions. That is why the United States targeted the supreme leader of Iran, and that is why the world will never be the same.